The basketball rolled to my feet. I bent down to pick it up, ready to toss it back to the kids warming up on the court. But when I stood up, my hand froze mid-air. There he was. Mitchell Hawthorne, the billionaire who had abandoned us 4 years ago, was kneeling beside a young boy, adjusting the child's jersey with gentle hands. He smoothed down the fabric, whispered something encouraging, and smiled. At this boy with a warmth I had begged him to show our daughter. My heart stopped. My lungs forgot how to breathe. The gymnasium noise faded to nothing. Who was this child? Welcome back to Mr. Roman's Story Vault. If you're new here, you've just stumbled onto a story that will stay with you long after it ends. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell, because what I'm about to share is something you don't want to miss. Have you ever had your entire world flip upside down in 30 seconds? One moment, you're a proud mother, watching your daughter prepare for the biggest tryout of her young life. The next moment, you're staring at the man who shattered your heart, and he's holding hands with a child you've never seen before, a child who looks exactly like your daughter. This is a story about secrets that families bury. It's about the lies we tell ourselves to survive, and the truths that eventually demand to be heard. It's about a mother who thought she had moved on, a father who chose money over love, and 2 children who never knew the other existed. But here's what makes this story different from anything you've heard before. This isn't just about betrayal. This isn't just about a wealthy man living a double life. This is about what happens after the bomb drops. It's about whether broken families can be rebuilt. It's about children who sometimes understand forgiveness better than adults ever could. And it's about a woman who had to decide whether giving someone a second chance made her strong or foolish. By the end of this story, you'll witness shocking revelations, gut-wrenching confrontations, and moments of healing that will remind you why hope is never wasted on the human heart. My name is Kendria Washington. I'm a marketing director, a single mother, and the woman who took her daughter to basketball tryouts, only to discover that her absent father had been raising another child all along. What I did with that discovery changed everything. So settle in, get comfortable, and prepare yourself, because this journey through love, betrayal, and redemption is about to begin. The alarm hadn't even gone off yet when I heard Jayla's footsteps padding down the hallway. 5:45 in the morning, and my 11-year-old was already awake. That told me everything I needed to know about how much this day meant to her. I found her in the kitchen, standing on her tiptoes to reach the cabinet where I kept the granola bars. She was already dressed in her practice shorts and a t-shirt, her basketball shoes tied so tight I worried about her circulation. "Baby girl, tryouts don't start until 9, I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You planning to run drills in the living room for 3 hours?" Jayla turned around, and I saw the nervousness she was trying to hide behind her confident smile. I couldn't sleep. My brain kept going over plays. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her. She was getting taller every day, already reaching my shoulder. Soon she'd be looking down at me, this child who had made me a mother and taught me what unconditional love truly meant. "Come on," I said. "Let me do your hair while you eat some real breakfast. You're going to need energy today." We settled into our familiar routine. Jayla sat on the floor between my knees while I sectioned her thick, beautiful hair into neat parts. I'd been doing her braids since she was old enough to sit still, and by now, my fingers moved on autopilot, weaving purple and gold beads into each one. "Mom, do you think I'm good enough?" she asked quietly. "Good enough for what?" "The lightning. Everyone says they only take the best. Like, the best. Kids who are going to play in college someday." I paused my braiding. "Jayla Marie Washington, look at me." She tilted her head back, her amber eyes meeting mine. "You've been playing basketball since you were 5 years old. You wake up early to practice. You stay late after every camp. You study game footage like other kids study cartoons. But more than all of that, you love this game. That love shows in every single thing you do on that court. But what if love isn't enough? Then you'll try again next year, and the year after that. Champions aren't made from never failing. They're made from refusing to stay down." Jayla smiled, and for a moment, I saw so much of myself in her. The determination, The fire, the refusal to accept limitations. But there was something else in her features too. Something I tried not to notice. The shape of her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking hard. Those came from her father. From Mitchell Hawthorne, the man who had chosen everything else over her. I pushed that thought away. Today wasn't about him. Today was about my daughter, chasing her dreams. "There," I said, securing the last bead. "Perfect." Jayla shook her head, listening to the beads click together. "I sound like music." "You are music, baby. Now eat your eggs before they get cold." The drive to Madison Heights Community Center took 45 minutes from our apartment on the east side of the city. Jayla spent the first 10 minutes with her headphones in, listening to what she called her game day playlist. I could hear the bass thumping from the driver's seat, all hip-hop beats and motivational lyrics. When she finally pulled the headphones out, she stared out the window for a long moment before speaking. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did Dad call this week?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I should have known this was coming. 3 days ago, Mitchell had called out of the blue, asking about Jayla's schedule, specifically about basketball. After 4 years of nothing but checks and occasional birthday cards, suddenly he wanted details about her activities. "He wanted to know how you were doing," I said carefully. "He could read my report cards for that." "You send them to him." Jayla's voice was matter-of-fact, but I heard the hurt underneath. "He asked about tryouts specifically, didn't he?" "Yes." "Is he coming?" I didn't know how to answer that. Mitchell hadn't said he was coming. He just asked questions: when, where, what time. I'd answered because, despite everything, I'd never bad-mouthed him to our daughter. Whatever my feelings about Mitchell Hawthorne, Jayla deserved the chance to form her own opinions. "I honestly don't know, sweetheart. Would you be mad if he did?" I took a deep breath. This was dangerous territory. Jayla was old enough to understand complicated emotions, but still young enough to believe in fairy tale endings. She'd spent years hoping her father would suddenly appear, would explain everything, would become the dad she saw other kids with at school events and games. "I wouldn't be mad," I said finally. "Whatever happens between me and your father, he's still your dad. If he shows up and that makes you happy, I'm happy. But would you be happy for you? Or just for me?" When had my daughter become so perceptive? "I'll be fine either way," I assured her. "Today is about you, not about ancient history between two adults." Jayla nodded slowly. "I used to dream about him coming to my games. Like really dream. At night, I'd score the winning basket and look up, and he'd be there in the stands." My heart ached. "Baby." "I stopped dreaming that a couple years ago," she continued. "I decided if I was going to score winning baskets, I'd do it for me. And for you. Because you're the one who's always there." I blinked back tears, grateful for the sunglasses hiding my eyes. "That's a very grown-up way to look at it. I'm almost 12. That's basically a teenager. Don't rush it," I laughed, grateful for the shift to lighter territory. "Teenage years come with their own challenges." "Like what?" "Like boys thinking they're interesting." Jayla made a face. "Boys are gross. Basketball is better." Hold on to that wisdom as long as you can. The Madison Heights Community Center was nothing like the recreation centers I'd grown up playing in. This facility sprawled across 2 city blocks with floor-to-ceiling windows and a parking lot full of luxury vehicles. I felt my 10-year-old Honda Civic shrink as I pulled in between a Mercedes and a BMW. "Whoa," Jayla breathed, pressing her face to the window. "Mom, look at this place." "Fancy doesn't win games," I reminded her, though I was equally impressed. "Fundamentals win games." I know, but still, whoa. Inside, the center was even more impressive. Multiple full-sized courts with pristine hardwood floors, digital scoreboards, banners hanging from the ceiling celebrating state championships going back 20 years. The Madison Heights Lightning had produced 12 Division I college players and 2 WNBA draft picks. This wasn't a recreational league. This was a launching pad. The lobby was crowded with families. I saw kids in matching athletic gear, parents clutching coffee cups and tablets. coaches with clipboards directing traffic. The energy was intense, nervous excitement mixed with fierce competition. Every child here believed they deserved a spot on the team. Most of them would go home disappointed. Kendria Washington, a woman with a lightning polo shirt, approached us, checking her clipboard. "That's me. This is Jayla." "Wonderful. Jayla, you're in Group B." Tryouts start with warm-ups in 15 minutes on Court 3. Parents can watch from the bleachers on the east side. She handed us each a lanyard with Jayla's name, a number printed on it. Good luck. We made our way to Court 3, where about 30 kids were already gathering. Some were shooting around, showing off their skills. Others huddled with parents, receiving last-minute advice. I noticed a few kids who looked genuinely terrified, and I was proud that Jayla wasn't among them. "There are so many of them," she whispered. "Doesn't matter how many there are. You're not competing against them. You're showing the coaches who you are. Let your game speak for itself." "What if I mess up?" I knelt down, taking her hands in mine. Her fingers were trembling slightly. "What do we always say?" She took a breath. "Pressure makes diamonds. And what are you?" "Unbreakable. That's my girl." I kissed her forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of coconut oil and new shoe leather. "Go show them what Washington women are made of." She jogged onto the court, immediately falling into step with the other players beginning their stretches. I watched her for a moment, my baby girl so grown up, so ready for this challenge, before making my way to the bleachers. I found a seat near the middle, surrounded by other anxious parents. Some had cameras recording every moment. Others were already texting updates to family members. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check emails, while my heart raced with nervous energy. Jayla was going to be amazing. I knew it. I could feel it. What I couldn't feel was the bomb that was about to explode. The gym doors opened. I wouldn't have noticed normally. Parents had been coming and going for the past 10 minutes, finding seats, grabbing snacks from the vending machines. But something made me look up. Maybe it was the way the crowd seemed to part. Maybe it was the shift in energy as people recognized wealth walking through the door. Or maybe, after 8 years of loving him and 4 years of hating him, some part of me could still sense Mitchell Hawthorne entering a room. He looked different. Older, obviously, but in a refined way. His sandy brown hair was cut shorter, styled professionally. He wore a casual blazer over dark jeans that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He moved with the confidence of someone who owned things, buildings, companies, people's attention, but I barely registered any of that, because Mitchell Hawthorne was holding a child's hand. A boy, maybe 11 or 12 years old, sandy curls bouncing as he walked, a Lightning jersey already on his small frame. Mitchell leaned down to speak to him, his expression full of warmth and encouragement and love. The kind of expression I'd rarely seen directed at Jayla. My chest constricted. The logical part of my brain scrambled for explanations. A nephew, a family friend's kid, some kind of big brother mentorship program through his company. But my gut knew. That instinct that had told me something was wrong years before Mitchell admitted he was pulling away, that same instinct was screaming now. This boy was his. Mitchell's eyes swept the gymnasium and found me. I watched the color drain from his face. I watched him stand up straighter, squaring his shoulders like a man preparing for battle. He said something to the boy, who ran off toward one of the courts. Group A. Different from Jayla's group, but the same tryouts. The same team. My daughter had a brother she'd never met, and Mitchell had been raising him while barely acknowledging her existence. The world tilted. The gym noise faded to static. Mitchell began walking toward me, each step measured and deliberate. The walk of a man approaching his own execution. And all I could think, over and over, was, how could you? How could you? How could you? He sat down on the bleacher, leaving 2 feet of space between us. Close enough to talk privately, far enough to maintain the boundaries he'd created. Kendria. His voice was quiet. I didn't know Jayla was trying out today. The lie was so obvious, it almost made me laugh. Really? I kept my voice level despite my shaking hands. Because you called 3 days ago specifically asking about her basketball schedule. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. This was about to change our lives forever. Mitchell sat 2 feet away from me on that bleacher, and the space between us felt like a canyon. 4 years of silence, of missed birthdays, of child support checks that arrived like clockwork but never came with a phone call. 4 years of wondering what I'd done wrong, what Jayla had done wrong, to make him disappear from our lives. And now this. I meant I didn't know she was trying out for this specific team, Mitchell said, his voice barely audible over the squeaking shoes and bouncing basketballs. The lightning. I turned to look at him directly. Who's the boy, Mitchell? The question landed like a physical blow. I saw his jaw clench, saw the muscle in his temple twitch, the way it always did when he was stressed. On the court, Jayla was running layup drills. Her form was perfect, knees bent, eyes on the backboard, smooth release. She was in her element, completely unaware that her world was about to shatter. His name is Bryce, Mitchell finally said. He's my son. Even though I'd known, hearing him confirm it felt like falling. Like the bleacher had disappeared beneath me, and I was dropping through empty air with nothing to grab onto. How old? 12. I did the math in my head. Jayla was 11. Which meant you had another child a year before Jayla was born. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached, clinical, like I was reading someone else's tragedy. While we were still together. No. Mitchell turned to face me fully, and I saw something raw in his green eyes. Kendria, no. It wasn't like that. I know how this looks, but I swear to you, it wasn't an affair. Bryce was born about a year before Jayla. His mother and I. It happened before you and I ever met. I didn't know about him until 3 years ago. The timeline shifted in my mind. Before we met, that changed things, but not enough to ease the ache in my chest. 3 years, I repeated. You've known you had another child for 3 years and never thought to mention it to me. I wanted to. His hands gripped the edge of the bleacher so hard his knuckles went white. God, Kendria, I wanted to tell you so many times. But how do you tell an 8-year-old that she has a brother her father is raising while he barely sees her? How do you explain that? You don't, I said quietly, watching Jayla sink a 3-pointer with casual confidence. You fix it. You don't maintain the distance. You bring your children together. You act like a father to both of them, instead of hiding one from the other. Mitchell ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from years ago from late nights when work stressed him out, and I'd massage his shoulders until he relaxed. I hated that I still remembered these things about him. I've handled everything wrong, he admitted. From the beginning, I've made every mistake possible. Why? The question came out sharper than I intended. Why pull away from Jayla? Why choose him over her? Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, watching the kids run drills. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with regret. Bryce's mother, her name was Tiffany, she died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of, telling me I had a son I never knew existed and that I was now his only parent. Despite my anger, I felt a flicker of sympathy. She never told you she was pregnant? We met at a tech conference in Seattle. One night. We both acknowledged the next morning that it was a mistake. She never contacted me again. I found out later she'd married someone else shortly after. Let him believe Bryce was his biological son. Mitchell's voice dropped lower. When she got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she finally told the truth. Her husband left. She spent her last months in hospice, making sure Bryce would be legally transferred to me after she passed. That poor child, I whispered. My maternal instincts overrode my complicated feelings about Mitchell. Losing his mother so young, finding out his father wasn't his father, that's traumatic. He's been in therapy twice a week since he came to me. His therapist says he's doing better, but there are still hard days. Basketball has helped. It gives him an outlet, something to focus on besides the grief. I looked across the gymnasium to where Bryce was warming up with Group A. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see Mitchell in his features. The same determined expression, the same athletic grace. But there was something else too, something that made my breath catch. He looked like Jailer. Different coloring, yes, but the shape of the nose, the stubborn chin, the way he bounced on his toes when waiting his turn. These were Washington traits, passed down through Mitchell's DNA to both his children. You still haven't explained why you abandoned Jailer, I said, forcing myself to stay focused. You said you handled everything wrong from the beginning. What beginning? What happened? Mitchell took a deep breath. My father called me the day after Jailer was born. He'd seen the birth announcement online, the one you posted on social media with her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. I remembered that photo. Mitchell had cried when Jailer was born, tears streaming down his face as he held our daughter for the first time. I'd thought he was the happiest I'd ever seen him. He gave me an ultimatum, Mitchell continued. End my relationship with you and Jailer, or lose everything, my position in the company, my inheritance. He threatened to destroy my career, freeze all my assets, and ensure I'd never work in tech again if I didn't comply. The words hung in the air between us. I felt anger rising in my throat like bile. And you chose money over your daughter. I chose to secure her future, Mitchell said firmly. My father was ruthless, Kendria. You never met him, but trust me when I say he would have done exactly what he threatened. If I'd fought him openly, we all would have suffered. I would have lost everything, which meant I couldn't provide. For Jailer, no college fund, no health insurance, no financial stability. So I played along. I stayed in his good graces. I made sure every check I sent you cleared, that Jailer's accounts grew, that she'd never want for anything material. But she wanted you, I said, my voice breaking. She didn't need your money. She needed her father. I know. The defeat in his voice was absolute. And then my father died 2 years ago. The man who'd held my life hostage was gone, and suddenly I was free to be the father I should have been all along. But by then, the distance felt impossible to bridge, and then Bryce appeared, and I had to be present for him because he had no one else. With Jailer, she had you, and you're amazing with her. She's incredible because of you. A whistle blew on the court. The coaches were organizing kids into groups for skill assessments. I watched Jailer listen intently to instructions, her face serious and focused. She'd inherited my work ethic, my determination to succeed through preparation and effort. On court too, Bryce was doing the same thing, listening carefully, nodding. At the coach's words, positioning himself to be first in line. That competitive drive came straight from Mitchell. They look alike, Mitchell said softly, following my gaze. I noticed it the moment I saw Jailer walk in. The way they move, the intensity. He was right. Despite different courts, different groups, there was something synchronized about them. When Jailer ran her drill, Bryce started his at almost the same moment. When she pivoted left, he pivoted right. Mirror images of the same genetic code. Does he know about her? I asked. No. I've kept everything separate. Compartmentalized. Mitchell's voice was bitter. That's what I'm good at, apparently. Building walls. The coaches called for defensive stance drills. Both children dropped into position. Knees bent, hands up, eyes forward. Identical postures from two kids who'd never met. This can't continue, I said. They're trying out for the same team. What happens if they both make it? You think you can keep this secret through an entire season of practices and games? I know. That's why I came today. Mitchell turned to look at me. I came to tell you the truth, to finally stop being a coward and face what I've done. You're about 4 years late. I know that too. On the court, Jailer executed a perfect defensive slide, her feet never crossing, her balance maintained. The coach nodded approvingly and made a note on his clipboard. Pride swelled in my chest despite the chaos of emotions swirling around us. She's extraordinary, Mitchell said, watching her. You've raised an extraordinary young woman. Don't do that, I warned. Don't sit here and compliment my parenting while acknowledging you've been absent. You don't get credit for noticing what you missed. You're right. I'm sorry. The apology felt hollow, or maybe I just wasn't ready to accept it. Maybe I'd never be ready. Before I could respond, both groups of kids moved into scrimmage formations. The coaches were splitting them into teams, evaluating how they performed in actual game situations. That's when I realized what was about to happen. The coaches combined groups A and B for full court scrimmages. They wanted to see how kids adapted to playing with and against unfamiliar teammates. It was smart evaluation strategy. It also meant Jayla and Bryce were about to share the same court. "Oh God," Mitchell breathed, realizing it the same moment I did. Jayla got assigned to the Blue Pennies team. She immediately took charge, organizing her teammates, calling out positions. Leadership came naturally to her. Bryce ended up on the opposing red team. I watched him assess the blue team's formation, his eyes calculating, strategic. He was reading the game before it even started. The whistle blew. Jayla brought the ball up the court, her dribbling controlled and purposeful. She called out a play, something she must have learned from YouTube videos or camps I'd scraped together money to afford. Her teammates moved into position. Bryce stepped up to defend her. The gymnasium seemed to hold its breath. Or maybe that was just me. They faced each other across the three-point line, sister and brother, neither knowing the truth. Jayla sized him up, noting his stance, looking for weaknesses. Bryce mirrored her intensity, ready for whatever she'd throw at him. "She's going left," Mitchell murmured beside me. "She always favors her left side when she's—" "Don't." I cut him off. "You don't get to know her tendencies. You weren't there to learn them." He fell silent, but I saw the hurt flash across his face. Jayla made her move. She faked right, crossed over to her left, and drove toward the basket. Bryce stayed with her, his footwork impressive for a 12-year-old. He forced her to adjust mid-drive, disrupting her rhythm. But Jayla adapted. She spun, creating space, and released a floater that arced perfectly through the air and swished through the net. Bryce nodded, a small gesture of respect. The exact same nod Mitchell used to give me when I won an argument. "Did you see that?" Mitchell asked, leaning forward. They're both reading the game at a level beyond their years. I had seen it, and it broke my heart. Because they were perfect for each other. Natural teammates or opponents, it didn't matter. There was a connection between them, something fundamental that transcended their ignorance of each other's identity. The scrimmage continued. Bryce scored on a fast break, his speed catching everyone off guard. Jayla answered with a three-pointer. They pushed each other, elevated each other, brought out the best in their respective teams. Every parent in that gymnasium was watching. Some were filming. The coaches were taking extensive notes, and Mitchell and I sat frozen, knowing that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. "They need to know," I said finally. "Today. Before either of us loses our nerve, how do we tell them?" I thought about Jayla's face when she asked about her father this morning, about the dreams she used to have of him showing up to her games, about the years of disappointment she'd learned to hide behind confidence and self-reliance. "Honestly," I said. "We tell them honestly, and then we deal with whatever comes after. If you're watching this and you've ever struggled with family secrets or complicated forgiveness, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to decide whether to give someone a second chance? What did you choose? Your story might help someone else who's facing the same decision. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get even more intense. The tryouts lasted another hour. Both Jayla and Bryce made it through every evaluation round, their skills clearly standing out among the other hopefuls. When the final whistle blew, the head coach announced that team selections would be posted online within the next few days. Parents started gathering their children, the gymnasium filling with chatter about performances and predictions. Mitchell and I remained on the bleachers, neither of us moving, both of us knowing what came next. "Bryce," Mitchell called out. The boy jogged over, his face flushed with exertion and excitement. "Did you see that steal I made in the last scrimmage?" Bryce asked, bouncing on his toes. "Coach Marcus told me it was college-level awareness." Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. He had Mitchell's sandy hair, but it was curlier, wild from the workout. His eyes were hazel instead of green, but the shape was identical. And that smile, confident, genuine, infectious, that was pure Hawthorne. I saw it. "You were phenomenal out there." Mitchell's voice was warm, in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Bryce, this is Ms. Washington, and—" "Mom?" Jayla appeared at my side, water bottle in hand, her braids still perfect, despite an hour of intense playing. "Can we get smoothies?" "Coach said they'll post the list tomorrow, and I'm too nervous to eat real food, but I'm also starving." She looked at Mitchell then, really looked at him, and I saw the walls go up in her eyes. The protective shields she'd built over years of learning not to expect anything from him. "Hi, Mr. Hawthorne," she said politely, formally. She didn't call him Dad anymore. That had stopped 2 years ago, around the time she'd stopped asking when he was coming to visit. The two children stood there, 2 feet apart, studying each other with open curiosity. There was a moment, brief but unmistakable, where something flickered across both their faces. Recognition, instinct, or just the magnetic pull of shared blood. "I'm Jayla," my daughter said, extending her hand with the confidence I'd spent years cultivating in her. "Bryce." He shook it, his grip firm. "You've got a sick crossover. That move you did in the 3rd scrimmage? I thought I had you, but you slipped right past." Jayla's face lit up. "Your defense is serious, though. You almost stopped me twice." "Most kids can't keep up when I shift gears." "Most kids haven't been playing since they were 5, Bryce countered. "Me too. 5 years old, first time holding a basketball." They grinned at each other, and my heart cracked open. Mitchell caught my eye. This was it. The moment we'd been dreading and delaying. "Why don't we all get smoothies?" Mitchell suggested, his voice carefully casual despite the tension radiating from his shoulders. "My treat. There's a place 2 blocks from here." Jayla looked at me with confusion. We hadn't done anything together with Mitchell in 4 years. Not since she was 7 and he'd taken us to a museum on her birthday. The last time he'd tried to be present before the distance became permanent. "That sounds nice," I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky. "Let's go." The walk to Smooth Moves was surreal. Jayla and Bryce fell into easy conversation, comparing favorite NBA players, debating whether defense or offense mattered more, discussing strategies they'd observed during tryouts. They walked ahead of us, their similar gaits almost synchronized. Mitchell and I followed behind in loaded silence. Every step felt momentous, like walking toward a cliff edge we'd both jump off soon. The smoothie shop was nearly empty, just us and a teenage couple in the corner booth, too wrapped up in each other to notice anything else. We settled into a booth near the window, the children sitting across from us, still deep in basketball conversation. I ordered Jayla her usual, mango pineapple with extra protein. Mitchell ordered something complicated for Bryce that involved acai and blueberries. The fact that Mitchell knew his son's smoothie order while probably not knowing Jayla's favorite color felt like a knife between my ribs. The smoothies arrived. Bryce took a long sip, then looked at Jayla with curiosity. "So, how do you know my dad and MS Washington?" he asked innocently. The question landed like a grenade on the table. Jayla's eyes went wide. She looked at Bryce, then at Mitchell, then at me. I watched her brilliant mind make connections at lightning speed. "Mr. Hawthorne is my father too," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled around her smoothie cup. Bryce's smoothie stopped halfway to his mouth. "That's not Dad?" He turned to Mitchell with confusion and betrayal already forming in his young eyes. This was a child who'd lost his mother, who'd been lied to about his paternity, who'd experienced more trauma in 12 years than most adults face in a lifetime. "What's happening?" Bryce's voice went small. "I don't understand." Mitchell leaned forward, his hands open on the table in a gesture of honesty. "Jayla, Bryce, there's something I need to explain, something I should have explained a long time ago. Are we related?" Jayla asked directly. She'd never been one to dance around difficult subjects. "Yes," Mitchell said. "You're brother and sister, half-siblings to be exact. You share a father, me, but you have different mothers." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched both children process this information, their faces cycling through emotions too complex for their ages. Bryce spoke first. "You have another kid? This whole time, I've had a sister, and you never told me." "I know how this sounds." "Do you?" Bryce's voice cracked. "Because it sounds like you lied to me. Again. Just like Mom lied about who my real dad was." just like her husband lied about being my father. Everyone lies to me. Tears spilled down his cheeks. This wasn't just about Jayla. This was every betrayal he'd experienced compounding on top of each other. Jayla, meanwhile, had gone very still. I knew this reaction. She was building walls, fortifying defenses, protecting herself from more hurt. "How old are you?" she asked Bryce. 12. I'll be 13 in March. I'm 11. 12 in June. She turned to Mitchell. "So you had both of us at basically the same time, but you chose to be his dad and not mine." "It wasn't like that," Mitchell started. But Jayla cut him off. "Then what was it like? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been raising my brother for 3 years while sending me checks instead of showing up. What was it like for you, Mr. Hawthorne?" The formality of Mr. Hawthorne was a weapon, and it hit its mark. I saw Mitchell flinch. "You're right to be angry," he said. "Both of you. I've made terrible decisions, and you're both paying the price for my mistakes. Were we a mistake?" Bryce asked, his voice small and broken. "No," Mitchell said firmly. "Neither of you is a mistake. You're both the best things that ever happened to me, and the fact that I've failed you both is my greatest regret." Jayla looked at me then, her amber eyes swimming with unshed tears. "Did you know about him?" "Not until today," I said honestly. "I found out the same time you did. When he walked into the gymnasium with Bryce, it was the first time I knew your father had another child. So he kept secrets from everyone," Jayla said bitterly. "Equal opportunity liar. Jayla Marie." I started, but she was right. Who was I to correct her for speaking truth? Mitchell took a deep breath. "You both deserve the whole story. Not edited, not softened. The truth." He looked at Bryce first. "Your mom and I met at a conference before you were born one night together, and then we went our separate ways. She never told me she was pregnant with you. I didn't know you existed until 3 years ago when her lawyer called to tell me she'd passed away and I was your legal guardian." Bryce's face crumpled. Even 3 years later, talking about his mother's death was raw. Mitchell turned to Jayla. "I met your mom a month after that conference. We fell in love. Real, actual love, not a one-night situation. When you were born, you were everything to me. I held you in the hospital and promised I'd be the best father in the world." "But you weren't," Jayla said flatly. "No, I wasn't. Because the day after you were born, my father, your grandfather, called me. He'd seen the birth announcement online. He told me that if I didn't end my relationship with your mother and cut ties with you, he'd destroy my career, freeze my assets, and make sure I never worked in technology again." Jayla's eyes narrowed. "Why would he do that?" Mitchell looked ashamed. "My father was a cruel man who cared more about his legacy than people. He didn't think your mother was appropriate for the Hawthorne family." I felt rage bubble up, but I swallowed it. "This wasn't about me. So you chose money over me," Jayla said. "I chose to make sure you'd be provided for," Mitchell corrected gently. "If I'd fought him openly, we would have lost everything. No college fund for you, no health insurance, no financial security, so I played along. I stayed in his good graces while secretly building accounts for you that he couldn't touch. I sent money every month. I made sure you'd never want for anything material. But I wanted you," Jayla whispered, and the tears finally fell. "I didn't care about money. I wanted my dad." Mitchell's own tears started then. "I know. And I'll regret that choice for the rest of my life." "What about me?" Bryce asked. "When did your dad die?" 2 years ago. So you could have come back to Jayla then. You were free. But instead, you got me, and you chose to be my dad instead of hers." The logic was devastating because it was accurate. "When you came into my life, you were 9 years old and grieving your mother," Mitchell explained. "You had no one else. Jayla had her mom, an incredible woman who'd built a beautiful life for her. I told myself I couldn't abandon you when you had nobody. But that meant continuing to abandon Jayla, and there's no excuse for that." "You should have told me about her," Bryce said. "You should have brought us together." "You're absolutely right." We sat in that smoothie shop for another hour. The teenagers left. The staff changed shifts. And we talked. Jayla asked questions about Bryce's mother. Bryce asked questions about the early years with Jayla. Mitchell answered everything honestly, no matter how painful. I filled in details he didn't know, Jayla's first words, her first steps, all the milestones he'd missed. Finally, Jayla looked at her brother. Actually looked at him, seeing him as family instead of a stranger. "Do you like science?" she asked. "I love science, specifically chemistry." "It's okay," Bryce said cautiously. "I like math better. And music. I play guitar. I play piano. Mom taught me." Jayla glanced at Mitchell. "Because Dad wasn't there to teach me anything." The barb landed, but Mitchell took it without deflecting. "I could teach you piano," Jayla offered to Bryce. "If you want, maybe you could teach me some guitar basics." "That'd be cool," Bryce said, a small smile breaking through. "Maybe sometime you could come over. I have a basketball hoop in my room. We could practice together." Both children looked at their parents expectantly. The decision hung between Mitchell and me. We could maintain separation, keep our lives compartmentalized, let the children be occasional acquaintances. Or we could do the hard thing, merge our complicated situation into something resembling a family. "We'll work something out," I said carefully, meeting Mitchell's eyes. He nodded, understanding the weight of what I was offering. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but a chance for our children to know each other. "How about this?" Mitchell suggested. "You both are trying out for the same team. If you both make it, and I think you will, you'll be seeing each other at practices anyway. Maybe we start there, get to know each other slowly. And if we both make it," Jayla said, her strategic mind already working, "we should practice together outside of team stuff. Work on plays. Bryce's defense could shore up my weak side, and my passing could set up his speed." "You'd want to do that?" Bryce asked hopefully. "Practice together?" "You're my brother," Jayla said simply. "I didn't know that this morning, but I know it now, and I've always wanted a sibling." They smiled at each other, tentative, uncertain, but genuine. Mitchell and I exchanged glances over our children's heads. We'd both made terrible choices that led us here. But maybe, if we were brave enough and committed enough, we could build something good from the wreckage. "Let's take it one day at a time," I said. "No promises except honesty from here forward. Can everyone agree to that?" 3 heads nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't resolution. But it was a beginning. And sometimes a beginning is enough. 3 days after the tryouts, the Lightning team roster went live online. Both Jayla and Bryce had made the cut. Out of 67 kids who'd tried out, only 14 were selected. My daughter and her newly discovered brother were both on that list. Jayla had screamed when she saw her name, jumping around our small apartment with joy. Then she'd immediately texted Bryce. They'd exchanged numbers at the smoothie shop, and I'd heard them on the phone celebrating together for 20 minutes. That same evening, Mitchell called. "Bryce wants to know if Jayla can come for dinner Friday night," he said, his voice careful. "He wants to show her his room, his guitar collection." I told him I'd ask you first. I'd hesitated. Jayla hadn't been to Mitchell's home since she was 7, and that had been his. Old downtown condo, not the estate he'd purchased after his father's death. "I'll be there too," Mitchell had added quickly. "Not just the kids, all of us, like a family dinner." The word family had felt strange coming from him. We weren't a family. We were 2 broken adults trying to fix the damage we'd caused 2 innocent children. But Jayla had wanted to go. So here we were. I stood outside Mitchell's front door on Friday evening, holding a homemade sweet potato pie, while Jayla fidgeted beside me. She'd changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on jeans and her favorite. Purple sweater, the one that brought out the amber in her eyes. "It's huge," she whispered, as we waited for someone to answer the doorbell. The house was massive, a modern colonial with floor-to-ceiling windows and a circular driveway. My Honda Civic looked absurd parked next to Mitchell's Tesla and Range Rover. Mitchell opened the door, and I was struck by how different he looked. No business casual tonight, just jeans and a navy Henley, barefoot, with flour dusted on his hands. "You're cooking?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Attempting to cook," he corrected with a self-deprecating smile. YouTube has been teaching me. Come in. The interior matched the exterior, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase. Art that probably cost more than my annual salary. It was beautiful in the way magazine spreads are beautiful. Cold. Impersonal. Jailer. Bryce came sliding down the hallway in sock feet, nearly crashing into a decorative table. You're here. Come see my room. I have a basketball hoop on my door and a guitar wall and everything. The two children disappeared upstairs, Bryce chattering excitedly, while Jailer smiled at his enthusiasm. Their laughter echoed through the cavernous house. Mitchell and I stood alone in his pristine kitchen. You really cook now? I asked, setting my pie on the counter next to what looked like an elaborate chicken dish. Bryce's mom, Tiffany, apparently loved cooking. He has her recipe box, and every Sunday he picks something from it that he wants me to make. Mitchell stirred something on the stove. Tonight is her honey garlic chicken with roasted vegetables. I've made it 6 times, and it's finally starting to taste like actual food instead of a science experiment. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of empathy. This wasn't the Mitchell I'd known, the confident tech mogul who ate takeout for every meal and thought microwaves were the pinnacle of culinary achievement. This was a man learning to honor his son's grief through recipe cards and YouTube tutorials. He must miss her terribly, I said softly. Every day. Some nights I hear him crying in his room. I go in, hold him, but I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix death. Mitchell's voice was heavy. I'm completely out of my depth with this parenting thing. That's why you pulled away from Jailer, I said, understanding clicking into place. Not just your father's threats. You didn't think you could be a good parent. Mitchell turned off the burner and faced me. My father was terrible. Cold, controlling, emotionally abusive. I grew up in boarding schools and summer programs, seeing him maybe twice a year. I had no model for how to be a present father. When Jailer was born, I was terrified I'd damage her the way he damaged me. So you chose to damage her through absence instead of presence. I know how backwards that sounds now, but at the time, it made sense in my messed up head. I thought distance was safer than disappointing her up close. And then Bryce came along and forced you to be present, whether you felt ready or not. He had nobody else. I couldn't be absent even if I wanted to. Mitchell poured 2 glasses of wine, offering me one. Being Bryce's father has taught me everything I did wrong with Jailer, and there's no way to get those years back. Upstairs, we heard the kids laughing. Music started playing, the sound of an acoustic guitar being strummed unprofessionally but enthusiastically. She's happy, I observed. I haven't heard her laugh like that in months. Bryce, too. He's been lighter since meeting her. Mitchell took a sip of wine. Kids forgive easier than adults. Kids haven't learned to protect themselves yet. Is that what you're doing? Protecting yourself? I considered the question. Was I protecting myself, or was I holding on to justified anger? Maybe both. I'm here, I said finally. That's something. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. We sat around Mitchell's dining table, a massive thing that could seat 12, but felt intimate with just the 4 of us clustered at one end. The chicken was actually good, the vegetables perfectly roasted. Mitchell had clearly practiced. This is delicious, Jailer said, and I could tell she meant it. Dad's gotten really good, Bryce said proudly. You should taste his pancakes. He makes them shaped like dinosaurs. Jailer's eyes widened. You make shaped pancakes? Mitchell blushed slightly. YouTube has a tutorial for everything. Mom makes regular circle pancakes, Jailer said, then quickly added, but they're the best regular pancakes ever. I'm sure they are, Mitchell said diplomatically. Bryce launched into a story about a cooking disaster from last month involving burned bacon and a smoke alarm. Jailer countered with a story about the time I'd tried to make her birthday cake from scratch and forgotten the sugar. Soon they were trading stories, comparing their different home lives, finding humor in the contrasts. Wait, you've never been to the science center? Bryce asked Jailer, shocked. The admission is expensive, Jailer said matter-of-factly. Mom and I do free museum days. I felt my cheeks heat with embarrassment. Mitchell's house probably cost more than I'd earn in my lifetime, and here was my daughter casually mentioning we budgeted for museum trips. But Mitchell didn't look judgmental. He looked ashamed. "We should go," Bryce said excitedly. "All of us. They have this new exhibit on space exploration with a simulator that makes you feel like you're on Mars." "That sounds amazing," Jayla said wistfully. "Then we'll go," Mitchell said firmly. "Next Saturday." All four of us. Jayla looked at me for permission. I nodded, swallowing my pride. This wasn't about me and Mitchell. This was about two kids getting to be siblings. After dinner, the kids convinced us to play a board game. We settled in Mitchell's living room, him and me on the couch, Jayla, and Bryce sprawled on the plush carpet, the game board between us. "Teams?" Bryce suggested. "Me and Jayla against you two. You want to team up against the adults?" Mitchell asked, amused. "Obviously." "We have to establish dominance early," Jayla said seriously, then grinned. The game was chaotic and fun. Jayla and Bryce developed an immediate shorthand, communicating with looks and gestures like they'd known each other for years instead of days. They won spectacularly, celebrating with an elaborate handshake they'd apparently invented upstairs before dinner. "Rematch," I demanded, laughing. "Nope." "Winners retire undefeated," Jayla declared. As the evening wound down, I noticed both children getting quieter, reluctant for the night to end. Bryce kept suggesting just one more thing, showing Jayla his basketball, card collection, teaching her a guitar chord, demonstrating his drone. Finally, at 9:30, I had to be the bad guy. "School night," I said. "We need to go. Can we do this again?" Bryce asked immediately. "Next Friday." Both children looked at their parents with hopeful eyes. "We'll see," I said, which both kids immediately recognized as not a no. The next 2 weeks developed a pattern. Friday dinners at Mitchell's became regular. Then, Sunday brunches at my apartment started, with Mitchell bringing groceries and the four of us cooking together in my tiny kitchen. It wasn't seamless. There were moments of tension, of old hurt bubbling up, of navigating boundaries that weren't clearly defined. Like the Tuesday evening, Mitchell showed up at our apartment unannounced with matching lightning team bags for both kids. "You can't just buy her things without asking me first," I told him in the hallway while the kids were in Jayla's room. They both needed gear bags. "The team requires them. I was going to get hers this weekend." "I know, but I was ordering Bryce's, so I—" "That's not the point, Mitchell." I kept my voice low but firm. "You don't get to swoop in with expensive gifts and play hero dad after years of absence. We have a system. I provide for Jayla." "I'm not trying to undermine you," he said, frustrated. "I'm trying to help." "Then ask me first. Co-parenting means communication, not assumptions." He'd apologized. He'd been more careful after that, texting me before making purchases or plans involving Jayla. Small steps toward respect. But there were good moments too. The evening Jayla had a meltdown over a math assignment, Mitchell had been on FaceTime with Bryce and overheard her frustration. He'd asked if he could help. I'd been ready to refuse. Math was my territory, but Jayla had wanted his help. I'd watched him explain pre-algebra concepts with patience I'd never seen from him before, breaking down problems until Jayla understood. When she finally got it, her face lighting up with comprehension, Mitchell had looked more proud than I'd seen him look about any business deal. "Thank you," Jayla had told him after. "You're actually pretty good at explaining stuff. Any time you need help, I'm here," he'd said. Later, after the kids had disconnected, Mitchell had called me back privately. "Thank you for letting me help her," he'd said. "She needed you. I'm not going to deprive her of her father out of spite. Still, thank you." These small interactions were rebuilding something between us. Not romance. That was too complicated, too damaged. But maybe friendship, maybe trust. The real magic happened at basketball practices. The Lightning trained 3 evenings a week. Mitchell and I developed a carpooling system. He'd take both kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd handle Mondays and team them up with another family for the third practice. Watching Jayla and Bryce play together was extraordinary. They had natural chemistry on the court, anticipating each other's movements, setting up plays that the coaches praised as unusually sophisticated for their age group. During one practice, I stood with Mitchell on the sidelines watching them run a drill. "They're incredible together," he murmured. "They have the same competitive instinct," I observed. "Neither of them accepts losing. That's all you. Jayla's drive comes straight from watching you work 3 jobs to keep her in a good school district." I glanced at him, surprised. "How did you know about the 3 jobs?" "I've always kept track. Just because I wasn't present doesn't mean I didn't care about how you both were doing." He paused. "I know about your promotion last year too. Director of Marketing at 34. You said you'd do it by 35, and you beat your own timeline." The fact that he'd remembered my career goals from years ago made something shift in my chest. "Thank you," I said quietly. On the court, Jayla passed to Bryce, who scored on a beautiful layup. They high-fived, grinning at each other. "We did good with them," Mitchell said. "Despite everything we did wrong, we made 2 amazing kids." "They did good despite us," I corrected, but I smiled. After practice that night, both kids were buzzing with excitement. The coach had announced that their first tournament was in 3 weeks, a regional competition in Detroit. "Can we all go together?" Bryce asked as we walked to the parking lot. "Like, drive together? Make it a family trip?" Jayla looked at me hopefully. "That's a 3-hour drive each way," I pointed out. "Perfect time for car games and bonding," Mitchell said. "We could make a weekend of it. The tournament is Saturday and Sunday. We could stay overnight, swim at the hotel pool, team dinner." "Please, Mom?" Jayla asked. I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, at Bryce's matching expression, at Mitchell's careful neutrality that didn't quite hide his own hope. "Separate rooms," I said firmly. "Obviously," Mitchell agreed quickly. "And I'm splitting the hotel cost. Kendria, non-negotiable." He nodded. "Deal." The kids cheered, already planning what games they'd play in the car. As we separated to our vehicles, Mitchell caught my arm gently. "This is working," he said quietly. "The 4 of us. It's actually working." "It's a start," I corrected, but I couldn't deny the truth in his words. We were becoming something. Not a traditional family, maybe, but something real nonetheless. Family is complicated. Forgiveness is messy. If you've ever had to navigate rebuilding trust with someone who hurt you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment about your experience. Did you give them a second chance? How did it turn out? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And don't forget to subscribe for the rest of this journey. 3 weeks later, we were on the road to Detroit by 7 in the morning. Mitchell drove his Range Rover while I navigated from the passenger seat, the kids in the back playing a game they'd invented. That involved spotting license plates from different states and creating ridiculous backstories for the drivers. "Ohio plate, that's definitely a retired circus performer driving to visit their grandkids," Jayla declared. "No way. That's a secret agent transporting classified documents disguised as vacation luggage," Bryce countered. Their laughter filled the vehicle, and I caught myself smiling. 3 weeks ago, these 2 had been strangers. Now they bickered and joked like they'd been siblings their whole lives. "Your turn, Mom," Jayla called out. "Michigan plate, red sedan. Easy." "That's a bakery owner heading to a top-secret cake competition," I said. "Dad?" Bryce prompted. Mitchell glanced in the rearview mirror. "That's clearly a retired superhero trying to live a normal life, but constantly fighting the urge to save people." "That's weirdly specific," Jayla observed. "Yeah, Dad." "You okay?" Bryce asked with exaggerated concern. We all laughed, and I felt something warm settle in my chest. This easy moment of shared joy. This was what family was supposed to feel like. An hour into the drive, the kids started a debate about whether defense or offense was more important in basketball. It got heated quickly, both of them passionate and articulate in their arguments. "You can't score if you can't get the ball," Bryce insisted. "You can't win if you don't score points," Jayla shot back. "Actually, you both need each other," Mitchell interjected. "The best teams balance both. They play to each other's strengths." Like you two do, I added. Jayla's offensive strategy sets up Bryce's defensive reads. Bryce's steals create fast break opportunities for Jayla's scoring. The kids considered this, then nodded in agreement. We are pretty good together, Jayla admitted. Pretty good? We're unstoppable, Bryce corrected with a grin. 2 hours in, we stopped at a rest area. While the kids ran off to burn energy, Mitchell and I grabbed coffee from the vending machine. This is nice, he said, watching Jayla and Bryce race each other to a picnic table and back. All of us together. It feels normal, I suggested. I was going to say right, but normal works too. He took a sip of terrible vending machine coffee and didn't complain. Thank you for giving this a chance, for letting me be part of these moments. I'm not doing this for you, I said honestly. I'm doing it for them. They deserve to be siblings without adult drama complicating it. I know. But still. Thank you. We got back on the road. The kids eventually fell asleep in the back seat, both of them leaning against opposite windows, their faces peaceful. They look alike when they sleep, Mitchell observed quietly. Same expression, like they're plotting something even in their dreams. They probably are. I heard them whispering about strategies last night on FaceTime. They FaceTime every night now. Did you know that? I nodded. Jayla talks to Bryce more than she talks to me lately. I'm trying not to be jealous about being replaced as her favorite person. You could never be replaced, Mitchell said seriously. You're her hero, Kendria. Everything she is, her strength, her resilience, her kindness, that all comes from you. The compliment landed differently than it would have weeks ago. Less like manipulation, more like genuine recognition. She has good qualities from you too, I admitted. Her strategic thinking, her competitiveness, the way she stays calm under pressure. That's generous, considering how I've handled pressure in my personal life. You're doing better, I said, surprised to find I meant it. These past few weeks you've shown up, consistently. That matters. Mitchell's hand moved toward mine on the center console, then stopped halfway. Testing boundaries, asking permission without words. I made a choice. I closed the distance, letting my fingers brush against his. Neither of us spoke. We just drove through Ohio farmland while our children slept and our hands touched in the space between us. The tournament was held at a massive sports complex with 8 courts running simultaneous games. The energy was electric. Hundreds of kids, coaches shouting, parents, cheering, the constant percussion of basketballs hitting hardwood. The Lightning's first game was at 11. Both Jayla and Bryce were starters, and they played with fierce intensity. The team won by 12 points, with Jayla scoring 15 and Bryce recording 4 steals. That's my girl. I screamed when Jayla hit a 3-pointer. Defense, Bryce, yes. Mitchell yelled when our son forced a turnover. We caught each other's eyes across the court, both of us hoarse from cheering, both of us ridiculously proud, and grinned. The second game was tighter. The opposing team had a player who matched Bryce's defensive intensity, and the score stayed within 5 points the entire game. Then it happened. Bryce went up for a rebound, got bumped mid-air, and came down wrong. The sound of him hitting the floor made my stomach drop. He stayed down, clutching his ankle, his face contorted in pain. Mitchell and I were on our feet instantly. We reached the court at the same time, both of us dropping to our knees beside Bryce. Don't move it, I said automatically, my mom instincts overriding everything else. Let the trainer look first. It hurts, Bryce gasped, tears streaming down his face. I know, buddy. I know. Mitchell's voice was steady despite the panic in his eyes. We've got you. The team trainer examined Bryce's ankle while we hovered. Jayla appeared beside us, her face pale with worry. Is he okay? She whispered. We don't know yet, baby, I said, pulling her close. Looks like a mild sprain, the trainer announced. He needs ice, elevation, and rest. No more playing today. But the championship game is tomorrow, Bryce protested through tears. We'll see how it looks in the morning, the trainer said diplomatically. Mitchell helped Bryce to his feet, supporting most of his weight. I grabbed the ice pack the trainer offered. We moved as a unit toward the bleachers, Jayla holding Bryce's hand, me carrying his shoes, Mitchell carrying our son. We found a quiet corner. Mitchell sat with Bryce's injured ankle elevated across his lap, applying ice. I sat on Bryce's other side, rubbing his back while he cried, not just from pain, but from frustration and disappointment. I messed up, Bryce said. I cost us the game. Hey, no, Mitchell said firmly. You didn't mess up anything. You played your heart out. This was an accident. The team needs me tomorrow. The team needs you healthy more than they need you playing hurt, I said. Trust me. I played through an injury once in high school, made it worse, and couldn't play for an entire season. Bryce looked at me with surprise. You played basketball? Point guard. 3 years varsity. Mom was actually good, Jayla added. I've seen the trophies in her closet. Why didn't you tell me? Bryce asked. You never asked, I said gently. But yes, I know exactly how you feel right now. And I know that the hardest part of being an athlete isn't playing through pain. It's knowing when not to. Mitchell caught my eye over Bryce's head. Something passed between us. Understanding. Partnership. Unity. We're going to take you back to the hotel, Mitchell decided. Get you properly iced and elevated. MS Washington and I will take shifts keeping you company while Jayla finishes out her games. I can stay with him, Jayla offered immediately. I don't need to play. Yes, you do, Bryce said. Someone has to win this thing for both of us. You sure? Positive. But you better bring back a trophy. Jayla hugged her brother carefully, avoiding his injured ankle. I'll score one for you. That evening, after Jayla's team won their second game and Bryce was settled in his hotel room with his ankle wrapped and elevated, Mitchell approached me in the hallway. Can I ask you something? Sure. Have dinner with me tonight. Just us. The kids can order room service and watch movies. We'll be gone 2 hours maximum. I hesitated. Mitchell. One dinner. No pressure. I want to talk to you. Really talk. Not in a car full of kids or on the sidelines of a basketball court. Just you and me. Where would we even go? There's a French place downtown. Chez Laurent. I made a reservation just in case. My breath caught. Chez Laurent was the restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary over a decade ago. The night Mitchell had told me he loved me for the first time over champagne and creme brulee. You remembered, I whispered. I remember everything about us, he said quietly. The question is whether you're willing to remember too. I should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, should have protected myself from the possibility of more hurt, but I found myself nodding. 2 hours. That's it. 90 minutes later, I sat across from Mitchell at a candlelit table, wearing the one nice dress I'd packed, a burgundy wrap dress that made me feel confident and elegant. You look beautiful, Mitchell said when I arrived. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button undone, looking like the man I'd fallen for years ago but with more depth in his eyes. You clean up okay yourself, I managed. The restaurant was exactly as I remembered. Intimate lighting, soft jazz, the scent of fresh bread and wine. Mitchell had requested our old table, the corner booth with the view of the city lights. This feels like time travel, I admitted. Except we're different people now, Mitchell said. Older, maybe wiser, definitely more tired. 2 kids will do that. We ordered. He remembered my favorite wine. I remembered his seafood allergy. And conversation flowed easier than I expected. We talked about the kids, yes, but also about ourselves. Mitchell told me about dismantling his father's toxic company policies, creating scholarship, funds for underprivileged students, trying to use his wealth for actual good. I shared about my promotion, the national campaign I'd led that won awards, the life I'd built through sheer determination. I'm proud of you, he said, and I heard genuine admiration. You always said you'd make director by 35. You did it. I had to. Single motherhood doesn't leave room for missed goals. The mention of our separation created a moment of tension, but Mitchell leaned into it instead of away. Can I tell you something? He asked. Something I've never told anyone? Okay. I wrote you letters. hundreds of them over the years. Every milestone I missed with Jayla, every moment I wanted to share with you, every apology I couldn't voice. I wrote it all down. Why didn't you send them? Because words weren't enough. I needed to become someone worthy of you reading them first. He paused. They're in a box in my closet, organized by date. 4 years of letters to a woman who probably hates me. I don't hate you, I said quietly, realizing it was true. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I don't hate you. That's more than I deserve. The main course arrived, but I barely tasted it. We were in dangerous territory now, dismantling walls I'd carefully built. Dessert came, creme brulee that we shared, just like our first anniversary, and with it, a shift in energy. I want to try again, Mitchell said, his spoon pausing halfway to his mouth. Really try. Not just co-parenting, not just being friendly for the kids. I want us to try. My heart hammered. Mitchell, I know I destroyed what we had. I know trust takes years to build and seconds to shatter. But these past weeks with you, watching you parent both kids, with such grace, seeing you slowly let me back into your life, remembering what it feels like to be near you, I can't pretend I don't still love you. Love isn't enough, I said, but my voice shook. You loved me before and still left. I was a coward before. I let fear make my decisions, fear of my father, fear of inadequacy, fear of hurting you worse if I stayed. But losing you taught me that the only thing worse than failing is never trying. What if we can't get it back? What if there's too much damage? Mitchell reached across the table, taking my hand. Then at least we'll know we tried. Our kids deserve parents who tried. But Kendria, this isn't just about the kids. This is about the fact that I've loved you since you corrected my pronunciation of quinoa at that coffee shop, and I'll love you until my last breath. Tears blurred my vision. You broke my heart. I know, and if you give me a chance, I'll spend every day trying to heal what I broke. We left the restaurant an hour later. Mitchell walked me to my hotel room door, his hand at the small of my back, in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. Thank you for dinner, I said, fumbling with my key card. Thank you for coming, for giving me a chance to... I kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't careful. It was 6 years of hurt and hope colliding in one moment. His arms came around me immediately, pulling me closer, and I felt tears on both our faces. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Mitchell rested his forehead against mine. What does this mean? He whispered. It means I'm terrified, I admitted. It means I'm probably making a huge mistake. But it also means I'm willing to try. Slowly, carefully, with counseling and boundaries and absolute honesty, I'll do anything you need. Can you promise me something? Anything. Promise me that if this doesn't work, if we try and fail, you won't abandon Jayla again. That no matter what happens between us, you'll be her father. I promise, Mitchell said solemnly. I will never abandon either of my children again, no matter what. I kissed him again, softer this time. Hopeful. Slow, I reminded him. Glacially slow, he agreed, though his smile suggested he was already imagining the future. I should go in. Early game tomorrow. Kendria, he called as I opened my door. Yeah? I love you. I never stopped. I smiled, heart full and terrified in equal measure. I know. The Madison Heights Community Center was decorated in purple and gold, lightning, colors transforming the gymnasium where everything had started 12 months ago. Both the 13U and 14U teams were celebrating their championship seasons, but that wasn't the only reason the Washington Hawthorne family had reason to celebrate tonight. I stood near the refreshment table, watching our children, our family, laughing with their teammates. Jayla had grown another 2 inches and made the 13U team. Bryce had recovered from his ankle injury and dominated the 14U division. Both had championship medals around their necks. Mitchell appeared at my side, 2 cups of punch in hand. Coach Marcus is trying to recruit them both for the elite travel circuit next year. Year-round training, national tournaments. That's a huge commitment, I said, accepting the punch. What did you tell him? That we'd discuss it as a family, and let him know. Mitchell's arm slipped around my waist, a gesture that had become natural over the past year. What do you think? I think we should ask the kids what they want. This is their journey, not ours. He smiled, pressing a kiss to my temple. Look at you, being all wise and measured. One of us has to be. You'd sign them up for everything if I didn't slow you down. Guilty. I'm making up for lost time. You can't make up for lost time, I said gently. But you can be present for the time you have. You've been doing that. It had been a year of therapy. Individual sessions for Mitchell working through his father's abuse, couples counseling. For us navigating our complicated history, family sessions with all four of us learning to communicate. It had been hard work. There had been setbacks and arguments and moments where I'd questioned whether we could actually make this work. But there had also been breakthroughs, healing, growth. Mitchell had sold his mansion 6 months ago. Too big, too cold, too full of his father's memory. He'd bought a house in my neighborhood instead, a 4-bedroom colonial with a basketball hoop in the driveway and a backyard big enough for summer barbecues. Close enough to my apartment that the kids could walk between houses, but separate enough that we maintained healthy boundaries. We weren't living together yet. We were taking it slow, just like I'd insisted, but we were building something real. Mom, Dad, Jayla called out, waving us over to where the photographer was setting up team pictures. The casual way she'd started calling Mitchell Dad again had happened gradually, not forced, not demanded, just natural progression as he'd proved himself through consistent presence. We gathered with both teams, coaches, and families. Mitchell and I stood behind our children, his arm around my waist, my hand resting over his. As the camera flashed, Jayla and Bryce held up their championship trophies, their smiles radiant and genuine. This moment, right here, this was what healing looked like. Later that evening, after the celebration wound down and we'd loaded sleepy, happy children into Mitchell's SUV, Bryce spoke up from the back seat. When are you going to tell everyone about the wedding? I turned around to look at him. What makes you think we haven't told everyone? Because Grandma Patricia called me yesterday, asking if it was true, and I had to. Pretend I didn't know what she was talking about, Jayla said, rolling her eyes. Your mom has a way of making everything dramatic, Dad. Mitchell groaned. I specifically asked her not to say anything until after we made the announcement. Your mother doesn't do waiting, I said, amused. Mitchell's mother, his father's second wife who divorced him years before he died, had come back into Mitchell's life 6 months ago. She was dramatic, opinionated, and wonderful. Everything his father hadn't been. Tell the story again, Bryce requested, about how Dad proposed. You were there, I pointed out. I know, but I like hearing you tell it. Jayla nodded enthusiastically. Me too. Tell it, Mom. I glanced at Mitchell, who was grinning. You tell it, I said. Okay, but I'm leaving out the part where I almost threw up from nerves. That's the best part, Bryce protested. Mitchell had proposed 3 months ago, on a Sunday morning that had started like any other. The kids had slept over at his place, and I'd come over for our now traditional Sunday breakfast. I'd walked into chaos, Bryce attempting pancakes while Jayla supervised, both of them covered in flour, the kitchen looking like a disaster zone. Mom's here, Jayla had announced, as if I hadn't been coming to Sunday breakfast for 6 months straight. Perfect timing, Bryce had said. We made your favorite, except they hadn't made pancakes. They'd made pancake letters that spelled out, "Marry him," across 3 plates. I'd stood there, confused, until Mitchell had walked in from the backyard, holding a bouquet of stargazer lilies, my favorite, and dropped to one knee right there in his flower-covered kitchen. Kendria Washington, he'd said, his voice shaking. You are the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. You raised an incredible daughter with grace and determination. You welcomed my son into your life with generosity I didn't deserve. You gave me a second chance when I'd given you every reason not to. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to build a future with you, with all of us. Will you marry me? I'd looked at the pancake letters, at our children's hopeful faces, at Mitchell kneeling in his own kitchen with tears in his eyes. The kids already said yes, by the way, Bryce had added. We voted. It was unanimous. You held a vote? I'd asked, laughing and crying simultaneously. We made a PowerPoint presentation, Jayla had said proudly, with graphs showing the benefits of combined household income and shared custody arrangements. Want to see it? You made a PowerPoint about your parents getting married. Bryce did the financial analysis. I handled the emotional appeal section. I'd looked at Mitchell, still kneeling, still holding flowers, still waiting for my answer. Yes, I'd said. Obviously yes. The kids had cheered. Mitchell had kissed me while they made exaggerated gagging noises. And we'd eaten proposal pancakes for breakfast while planning our future. Best proposal ever, Bryce declared now from the back seat. The PowerPoint really sold it, Mitchell agreed, winking at me. Our blended family wasn't perfect. We'd learned that quickly. There were growing pains, like the first time Bryce had called me Mom by accident and immediately apologized, worried he was betraying his mother's memory. I'd held him while he cried, assuring him that loving me didn't mean forgetting her, that hearts expand to hold more love. They don't replace it. Or the time Jayla had exploded at Mitchell for missing her science fair because of a work emergency. You're doing it again, she'd shouted. You're choosing work over me. It had taken hours of conversation, tears on both sides, and Mitchell showing her his calendar, filled, with her events clearly prioritized, before she'd believed he wasn't falling into old patterns. There were logistics. 2 houses meant coordinating schedules, duplicating supplies, figuring out where everyone slept when. We'd created systems, color-coded calendars, shared grocery lists, family meetings every Sunday night to plan the week ahead. There were moments of awkwardness, like when Mitchell's business colleagues asked about his kids, and he had to explain the complicated timeline. Or when my family asked questions about our relationship that I didn't have neat answers for. But there were beautiful moments too. The evening I'd come home from work exhausted, and Bryce had made me tea without being asked, sitting with me while I decompressed. Mom always liked tea when she was tired, he'd said. I figured you might too. The Saturday morning, Mitchell and Jayla had surprised me with breakfast in bed, slightly burned. Toast and over-salted eggs that I'd eaten every bite of while they'd beamed with pride. The night all 4 of us had built a blanket fort in the living room and watched movies until we'd fallen asleep in a pile, limbs tangled, completely comfortable with each other. We'd established rituals, Friday game nights, Sunday breakfast cook-offs where the kids judged our culinary attempts, Wednesday rose and thorn dinners where everyone shared the best and worst parts of their week. Jayla and Bryce had developed their own sibling dynamic. They bickered about everything. Who was better at basketball, tied. Who was smarter, Jayla at humanities. Bryce at math, who got to choose the music in the car. They'd implemented a democratic rotation system. But they also protected each other fiercely. When a kid at school had made fun of Bryce for being in therapy, Jayla had shut it down immediately. When someone had asked Jayla why her parents weren't together when she was born, Bryce had stepped in with a mature explanation about families being complicated. They were siblings in the truest sense, annoying and loving in equal measure. 2 weeks after the championship celebration, we gathered again, this time for a different kind of victory. We'd kept the wedding small, intimate, just what mattered. The ceremony took place in the backyard of Mitchell's house, our house. Soon, once we officially combined households after the wedding, 30 people, close friends, family, teammates, nothing fancy, just real. Jayla wore a purple dress that matched her personality, bold and confident. Bryce wore a suit he'd picked out himself, with a tie that had tiny basketballs on it. They stood beside us as our witnesses, our family, our reason for everything. The officiant was Coach Marcus, who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this. I've watched this family form on the basketball court, he said. I've seen 2 kids who didn't know each other become inseparable siblings. I've seen 2 adults who'd been hurt learn to trust again. This isn't just a wedding, this is a family choosing each other. Mitchell's vows made me cry. Kendria, you taught me that being a father isn't about genetics or money or grand gestures. It's about showing up, being present, doing the work even when it's hard. You showed up every single day, for Jayla, You showed up for Bryce even when you had no obligation to, and you gave me the chance to show up too. I promise to keep showing up for all of you, every day, for the rest of my life. My vows were simpler. Mitchell, you broke my heart. But you also did the hard work of earning it back. You didn't demand forgiveness. You lived your way toward deserving it. You showed me that. People can change, that second chances aren't weakness, that love is a choice we make every day. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this family we've built from broken pieces. Jayla presented the rings, simple gold bands we'd chosen together. Bryce held the unity candle we'd light later. I now pronounce you married, Coach Marcus declared. You may kiss your bride. Mitchell kissed me while our children cheered, while our friends applauded, while the sun set over the backyard where our family would make 1,000 more memories. We were officially the Washington Hawthorne family, blended, complicated, imperfect, and whole. That night, after the celebration ended and the guests went home, the four of us sat in the backyard under string lights, still in our wedding clothes, not wanting the day to end. This was perfect, Jayla said, leaning against my shoulder. Better than perfect, Bryce added, settled against Mitchell's side. Can I tell you all something? I said, looking at my family, chosen and given, biological and blended. A year ago, I thought broken things stayed broken. I thought betrayal was permanent, that distance couldn't be bridged, that some damage couldn't be healed. But you were wrong, Jayla said softly. I was wrong, because I learned that broken things can become beautiful again. Not the same as before, the cracks still show, but sometimes those cracks let the light in. They remind us what we survived, what we fought for. Like Japanese pottery, Bryce said, kintsugi, where they fix broken ceramics with gold, and the repair becomes part of the beauty. Exactly like that, Mitchell said, pride evident in his voice. We're a kintsugi family. The hardest shots to make are the ones you attempt after you've already missed, I continued. But they're also the most important, because champions aren't made from never falling, they're made from getting back up. Jayla sat up straighter. That's going in my valedictorian speech someday. Don't get ahead of yourself. You're only 12, I laughed. I'm planning ahead, strategic thinking. She grinned at Mitchell. I get that from Dad. The casual claiming of him, as Dad still made Mitchell's eyes shine with emotion. What did we learn this year? Mitchell asked, a question from our family therapy sessions that had become a ritual. That family isn't just biology, Bryce said. It's choice. That forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing to move forward, Jayla added. That second chances are gifts, not guarantees, Mitchell offered. And that showing up is the most powerful thing we can do. I looked at each of them, this family I'd never imagined a year ago. I learned that love isn't enough by itself, but love plus action, plus honesty, plus consistency, plus commitment, that's everything. We sat there as the stars came out, as the night wrapped around us, as our new life together truly began. This story started with betrayal at basketball tryouts. It grew through painful revelations and difficult conversations. It transformed through consistent effort and brave vulnerability. And it led here, to a family that chose wholeness over perfection, healing over hiding, and love over fear. If this story moved you, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, don't wait. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that broken families can heal, that second chances are possible, that showing up matters more than being perfect. Drop a comment telling me, what's the most important lesson you're taking from Kendria's story? Is it about forgiveness? About giving people second chances? About putting children first? About believing in redemption? Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Your story of healing might inspire someone else's journey. We're all in this together, learning how to love imperfectly but completely. This is Mr. Roman's Story Vault, where we don't just tell stories, we learn from them. Until next time, remember, pressure makes diamonds, and you are unbreakable.